have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup. Happy to see you.
Happy Transgender Awareness Week.
Exactly.
In the news, but it's always Transgender Awareness Week here. In the news, politicians, school board members want to literally burn LGBTQ books. But some Americans are fighting back.
Yeah, at first it was depressing. Now it's getting a little more hopeful. But right-wing religious groups are on their relentless crusade. They are objecting to the Biden child care plan if it means they can't discriminate against us.
That's very mean. And as I said, it is Transgender Awareness Week. And in this week, we have news both tragic and uplifting.
We will remember a gay pioneer in the field of HIV and aging who died this week, and a distinguished lesbian artist.
The International Olympic Committee has updated its framework for trans, non-binary, and intersex athletes.
Very interesting, but with both good and bad news. And we now have two LGBTQ finalists on Dancing with the Stars.
Gay kisses were lighting up the Country Music Awards, the Chucky TV series, and The Simpsons.
How's that for a smorgasbord of opportunities? And our guest in the middle of the show is Jim Hubbard, co-creator of the Act Up Oral History Project, which is launching a spectacular new website. We'll show you parts of that and talk to Jim about it.
So before we get to all the library news, national news is that the Build Back Better plan ensures middle-class families pay no more than 7% of income on childcare, and expanding access to 20 million children. But it bars federal funds for childcare services that discriminate on a variety of bases, and Republicans, the Catholic bishops, Orthodox Jewish groups are howling, as is Joe Manchin, unfortunately, because currently, religious groups get funding indirectly for child care through the Child Care and Development Block Grant programs, and they're able to avoid the anti-discrimination laws. So the proponents of discrimination are trying to tank the whole expansion.
And you know where that leads? That leads to the government tanking on upholding non-discrimination laws. It is this battle we have been describing for several years now between so-called religious freedom guarantees in the Constitution and non-discrimination laws that include us. And there is no easy answer on any of this when you have right-wing religious people asserting their right to discriminate. And there's a real example of it this week, too, because there is a lesbian couple that has filed suit. They want to be foster parents for a refugee child at the Mexican border. All these, unaffiliated kids sitting there, and they're both professors at Texas A&M and experts on the law around these kids. And they saw these kids and they want to be a foster parent. Well, they applied for this. But who does the government pay to run the program that assigns foster parents and kids? The Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church has said, no, you cannot be foster parents because you do not fit the image of the Holy Family. So they sued.
You mean a woman who was impregnated by the Holy Spirit and a guy who didn't have sex with her, which was the Catholic view?
Exactly. So they sued, and the case is in the courts, and the government was on their side, except the government has now made a statement to the court saying, hold on, don't decide this, put it to the side. we're working something out. And what they're working out is that they're going to hire a separate agency to deal with LGBTQ potential foster parents, so that they can separate but equal, the Catholic Church program that discriminates from another program that won't. Meanwhile, hundreds of millions of dollars will still go to the Catholic Church to run their program.
I guess the Holy Father is really not very pro-gay, is he?
Statements to the contrary notwithstanding.
Yeah.
So anyway, the religious, lest you think that right-wing religions have taken a step back, forget it. They are just relentless, shameless, and totally dedicated to our second-class status.
Well, we talk about a lot of bad news on the show, but a couple of national trends that are encouraging. The Human Rights Campaign is releasing its Municipal Equality Index, and there's a record-breaking 110 cities in this country earning a score of 100, up 11 from 2012. You can go to hrc.org to read that. And, the final tally on the elections. The Victory Fund reports that 184 LGBTQ candidates won their races. 31 states had LGBTQ candidates on the ballot. 60% of lesbian candidates won. 63% of trans women were victorious. And 80% of our incumbents were reelected.
Okay, that's good. But let's get into the real culture wars, which are going to affect future elections as they affected a little bit the current elections this year. And it's all taking place over so-called education. And I say so-called because, of course, this has nothing to do with real education. It just has to do with culture wars.
Right. I mean, over at Vanderbilt University, they put up a sign about libraries. Let's put it up on the screen there. A great library has something in it to offend everyone. But we start in Flagler County, Florida.
Yeah. Now, I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I'm not sure it's a winning concept. Well, I don't think the right wing is going to say, "Oh, okay, well then that's fine. I don't have to agree with everything in the library."
Nobody has to agree with everything. I hope you don't agree with everything in the library. You'd be out of your mind.
They think they do. They think that they have a right to set absolute boundaries, and everything has to agree with their worldview.
If they set up legal standards, they're going to end up having, and I mean this seriously, they're going to have to ban the Bible because it's full of sex and violence. It is a book that warps children, etc. So, I realize
they're hypocrites. They're not going to go along with that analysis
completely. But anyway, let's go through some of these cities and counties. In Flagler County, Florida, a school board member filed a criminal complaint over the fact that they've got 4 copies of an LGBTQ book recommended for 14 to 18-year-olds that she says violates state obscenity laws. This woman, Jill Woolbright, cited All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson, which is an option for TV by Gabrielle Union, focused on LGBT young men of color, widely praised for young people, including by Teen Vogue and a Kids Book Choice Award finalist, but she wants a criminal complaint against it.
There are fights like this going on in Virginia, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Texas, New Hampshire, all over. And some group called Moms for Liberty is now offering a bounty for people who turn in divisive teachers. They will pay you $500 if you finger a teacher who they regard as divisive.
Well, the right wing has been doing this on college campuses a lot too. But in terms of book burning, there's Virginia. A school board voted 6-0 to ban certain books. 2 board members wanted to throw them into a fire in Spotsylvania. Board member Rabi Abouismail, who once interned for extremist representative, U.S. Representative Dave Brat, Republican, said schools would rather have our kids reading gay pornography than about Christ.
He wants the Bible.
Yeah. So the board, so people got up, sane people came to the next board meeting, got up in arms about this, and the board reversed itself 5-2 after a 4-hour hearing.
It only felt like 4 years. Yeah, but that's the good news, and that is what makes me hopeful when we see all these inflammatory headlines, of course, screaming about all this book burning and book banning and everything. And happily, people react to that and say, no, that's not what I want in my community. And so they show up at this school board hearing in Spotsylvania, Virginia, and scores of people testify for hours on how important these books are and how they've saved lives and how people need to see themselves and the lives these kids are living that need reflection in these books, lives of abuse and lives of questioning and how important these books are. And luckily, this school board listened and did reverse itself.
Well, in Pennsylvania's Fulton County, 85% of the people there voted for Trump. Commissioners denied the library in McConnellsburg, the county seat, a $3,000 increase in their $12,000 a year stipend, citing library hosting an LGBTQ support group. Commissioner Randy Bunch said it was a hate group. And if the library has to have them, then they got to have the Proud Boys and then BLM, Black Lives Matter. So enlightened local people did a GoFundMe and raised $15,000, not $3,000, $15,000 for the library, and a Facebook drive raised $9,000 more.
Librarians are smart people. I say that because I have librarians in my family and because I have followed librarians, and they really are smart and progressive. And they are a bulwark against this kind of thinking. So I thank all the librarians who are upholding standards of, transparency, fairness, openness, and intellectual curiosity.
Well, the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, ordered an LGBTQ book for teens removed from school libraries as pornographic. This was Maya Kobabe's Genderqueer, a memoir from Simon & Schuster, that great pornography house, which the school library journal called a great resource for those who identify as non-binary and bisexual.
Think of all the LGBTQ people we know and that you hear about, your friends, family, people all over the world who say that when they started to realize that they were having feelings of otherness, feelings of attraction that were not described as in the norm, where did they go? They went to the library and they looked in books.
Oh, yes, I looked in books too, in the Baldwin Public Library on Long Island, and all I could find was mostly the heinous stuff written by the anti-gay psychiatrists. But there was, a gay novel in there, mixed in there that I read. There was George Weinberg's book in 1972, Society and the Healthy Homosexual. Things were only then just opening up.
But people are still going to libraries because this is something that they don't, and whether it's sexuality or abuse or bullying or whatever they're dealing with, if they feel it's something they can't discuss with anyone, they turn to books for information and role modeling and comfort. And the idea that we would restrict that information and homogenize books down to meaningless Christian pamphlets is just tragic and horrifying.
Well, and who was it? Mike Flynn saying, this is a Christian country, and we should make it officially a Christian country. I just wish Christians would behave more like the Jesus that they worship, but they don't. And
who's the politician who just said that we should have a one religion country?
Well, Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn.
Yes, Mike Flynn. Yes.
Right. Then there's Lauren Boebert of Colorado, crazy right-winger. She compared trans healthcare to grafting aborted babies to lab rats. That's a new one on me. She's one of the honored guests, along with Paul Gosar, who's being censured today, and Matt Gaetz, at the New York Young Republican holiday party on December 4th, once again at an undisclosed location because they're rats and they're afraid to let people know where they are. Wow,
they just went out and found the most provocative people.
The list goes on. I'm not going to read the whole list.
Wow.
It's all about, owning the libs, tweaking. They want a protest and they may get one.
Well, they certainly have made their intentions clear. All right, shall we move on to some other things?
Sure. Well, in more transgender and gay news, the Human Rights Campaign is calling on the NCAA to include non-discrimination protections in its constitution at its special convention. The new draft stripped the document of existing non-discrimination policy language. The NCAA committee is pushing a non-binding statement on diversity and inclusion as a replacement, meaning doing nothing.
All those generalized statements. We'll get to a bigger discussion of what the International Olympic Committee is doing in international news, I think. So stay tuned for more sports. Meanwhile, Lawrence Villard, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is appealing a ruling from the Veterans Administration. We've heard this story so many times before. He cannot get enhanced survivor's benefits after his partner's death because they were not married for 8 years, which is the requirement for enhanced benefits. He was married to Navy veteran Rhett Chalk. That's Lawrence on the left and Rhett on the right. He's supposed to get enhanced benefits because he had to go the extra mile to take care of Rhett, who needed special care and attention. So Lawrence is supposed to be compensated for that with enhanced benefits, but 8 years they were supposed to be married. Well, guess what? It wasn't legal 8 years ago.
Right. They only want to give him $280 a month. He's entitled to $1,300 a month, and he's appealing in federal court.
So good luck to you, Lawrence. We support that.
Okay. By the way, the fallout from Dave Chappelle's anti-LGBT special continues. The Duke Ellington School of the Arts canceled a planned fundraiser with Chappelle, who was an alumnus, after students threatened to walk out. 2 students were asked to host an exhibit on that day, and the Chappelle Theater was to be dedicated. And they said, we're not comfortable with doing this because many of our peers are LGBTQ. Chappelle's a big donor to the school, says having it named for him is the greatest honor of his life, and he planned to raise $1.5 million.
They've postponed it temporarily for 6 months because he is such a major supporter of the school.
And Lauren Boebert supports him.
Well, I support his supporting the school. It's just there should be a way to condemn him while not losing all that support for a worthy school that needs that.
Let's see if he's really interested in dialogue. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed 2 trans-related bills. We got a picture there at our community center. One vacates convictions committed while a person is a victim of sex trafficking, labor trafficking, or compelled prostitution is the phrase. The other requires utility companies to allow customers to use their preferred names and pronouns.
Yeah. In North Carolina, Lambda Legal Defense is filing suit this week on behalf of 1 adult and 2 minors for access to accurate IDs for trans people. The state has shut down any or rejected any idea of letting trans people get accurate IDs. So
they demand that you have sex reassignment surgery, what they call sex reassignment surgery. And people say that's discriminatory. I can't afford that. In Orlando, that attack on the Pulse Memorial by a guy in a wheelchair who torched it, well, the perp got arrested He's a 64-year-old guy named Mark Henson and charged with felony criminal mischief, did about $1,000 in damage. They're not looking on this as a hate crime. He seems to have been, a homeless person who was just, we're not clear what his motivation was. He seems a little out of it.
We are, however, clearer about the motivation of former Las Vegas Raiders coach John Gruden and his thousands of emails full of homophobic, misogynist, racist vitriol. But he is now suing, claiming that revealing his emails was Soviet-style character assassination. Really? And what were your emails, John?
Yeah. He called us queer. He called Commissioner Goodell, used an anti-gay slur against him.
Yeah.
All right. So it is Transgender Awareness Week. You really need, if you want to find out what's going on in your community, we don't have a comprehensive list, but Google Transgender Day of Remembrance and your city, your area, and you'll probably find something. In New York, there's going to be a rally and vigil on November 20th, Transgender Day of Remembrance, in Washington Square at 4 o'clock.
That's Saturday, and there are many groups involved in putting this together. But 4 o'clock, Washington Square Park by the Arch, Saturday the 20th.
Stuff going on. And of course, Transgender Day of Remembrance is about remembering, especially the people who are being murdered, who are transgender. And in Tampa, Jenny DeLeon was the 4th trans woman killed in Florida this year, 25 years old, Latinx, killed outside her home on November the 2nd. Police are still investigating and seeking information from you if you know anything. She
got involved with PFLAG as she was going through her transition, got support from them. They described her as, I love this phrase, a bright, enigmatic soul, and are devastated, of course, by news of her death. And then in Memphis, Tennessee, we don't have a lot of information about this, but Danielle Johnson shot dead. They have arrested an alleged perpetrator who was, I think, her boyfriend.
Well, this guy was already indicted on 2 counts of first-degree murder in June for an incident in August 2020, but he was not in custody. She's a black trans woman. Her mother said, all I know is that she was shot and the hitman drove away. So they are looking for this guy, I guess.
In Georgia, at Pebblebrook High School, a new trans student at the school, Shantae Payne, 15 years old, has only been at the school for a month, repeatedly harassed and beaten by other students. There's a brief video online. We're not going to show you that. It's too upsetting. But others standing by, taking the video while Shantae is being brutalized. The school has promised an investigation. It doesn't sound like they're treating it very urgently.
We want to mourn the passing of famous Lebanese-American author and artist, Etel Adnan. She died Sunday in Paris at 96. She's survived by her partner there on the right, who was also an artist, Simone Fatal, partner of 4 decades. Adnan wrote a seminal novel about the Lebanese Civil War and became a visual artist in her later years, and you see one of her works behind her there. She was a poet and wrote of political discord and violence. Her visual art, geometric as you see and vibrantly colored abstract work, was featured in the Whitney Biennial in 2014 and won France's highest cultural honor, the Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. Her work is now on view at the Guggenheim Museum.
In Oklahoma, the governor has ordered the Department of Health not to honor a settlement that was reached to reimburse a non-binary person for getting correct birth certificates, non-gender specific birth certificates, the governor said, well, I didn't approve it. Just because you reached a settlement with the Department of Health doesn't mean I approved it. So I'm canceling it. You stop. And it violates state laws.
There's going to be a service for lesbian pioneer Elaine Romagnoli, and Sunday, November 21st at 11 a.m. There she is at the Stonewall. She, of course, was, we've talked about her on the show before, about pioneering lesbian bars in New York, some of the biggest and most important ones over decades.
Bonnie and Clyde's, the Cubby Hole, many bars. Elaine was a community organizer as an entrepreneur and beloved by the community. If you can't make the gathering on Sunday at 11 at the Stonewall, it will be broadcast online, and we'll put the address in our show note, but it's tinyurl.com/Zoom Elaine. So we'll remind you of that in our weekly show note.
Okay.
In Terre Haute, Indiana, 2 young trans men are suing their school district. They were barred from using the boys' restroom. And they say teachers, the principal, the yearbook won't use their preferred names and pronouns, so they're going to court. And in Idaho, Audrey Edmo fought for a year and a half to get trans surgery in prison, and is now won the case and is now suing for legal fees.
Okay. All right. International news?
Sure.
Well, Hungary, of all places, is hosted the MTV European Music Awards, and it included a statement of support for LGBTQ people in Hungary. Lil Nas X won the best video. LGBT activists were honored during the thing. So they were making a statement by having it in this virulently anti-LGBT country, at least in terms of its government.
Yeah, a lot of performers spoke out in support of LGBTQ people. So they managed to do all that without the government shutting it down. We'll see what the longer range prospects are in Hungary. Not looking good, but they pulled that off. The big news internationally this week is from the International Olympic Committee, which has issued new guidelines on trans and intersex and non-binary participation in...
Well, they're not really calling it guidelines. They're calling it a framework, and it's non-binding. Guidance.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. They have had, for the last few years, rules. Testosterone levels you had to meet to compete in one category or another. And it's been very strict and very hard-edged. And they've gotten, of course, all these problems with trans athletes and whether they were qualified to compete. Caster Semenya from South Africa, the runner, not meeting testosterone guidelines. So they finally have thrown up their hands and said, fine, we will get rid of the strict guidelines. We will, or rules. We will issue this guidance, 10 points of guidance about inclusivity and fairness, and get rid of any rules about testosterone levels. But it's up to you, countries, international sports federations. You can set your own levels. Now, the problem is what's going to happen if countries disagree? What if one country says, we have a very open policy about people competing. We have these very mild guidelines. And another country says, no, we want very strict guidelines. Where is that going to end up?
Right. It's so, some of the trans advocates sound cautiously optimistic about it, and they were involved with this development of this framework.
They were. And the language is very good, but the problem becomes in the real application of this and how it's going to play out with the countries and sports federations that are full of hardliners who don't want trans inclusion. There is nothing in this guidance to stop them from raising objections and blocking participation.
Right. Okay. somewhat better news in India. They're set to have their first out gay judge. It'll be on the Delhi High Court, which is the most likely to bring marriage equality to us. He is Saurabh Kirpal. But there's been a delay for like 3 years attributed to his sexual orientation. He was the lawyer on the landmark case where the High Court decriminalized homosexual sex. He's married to a Swiss diplomat, and the government has been objecting to that as a conflict of interest and a security risk, which he said is specious. His father was the chief judge of India in 2002.
Yeah, it has been delayed for years, but now he has been officially nominated. So the thinking is that this is the breaking of the blockade and that it looks good for him to get on the court, but it's not a done deal yet.
Right.
World Pride has been assigned to Taiwan for 2025. My question is, will Taiwan exist in 2025?
It's the first one in East Asia, Kaohsiung. I mean, this is in keeping with some of these World Pride events being held a little provocatively, like in Rome during the 2000th anniversary of Jesus' birth.
That was the first one, the first World Pride. And then they went to Jerusalem, yes. And then here for Stonewall 50. But, this Taiwan-China thing is looking very, very bad. And Taiwan LGBT people are not expected to show up at the gay games in Beijing, which have now been postponed a year because of COVID. I think it's very risky. China, one good piece of news from China, they have allowed the creation of a clinic, the first clinic to treat and help trans kids in Shanghai.
Ghana is now debating this horrible anti-LGBTQ bill. And this week, the Archbishop of Canterbury backtracked after voicing grave concerns over the bill. That is heartily supported by the Anglican bishops in Ghana. So Justin Welby apologized to the Ghanaian bishops for failing to consult them. Well, I mean, he should have talked to them first, sure. Rightify Ghana, which is the LGBT group there, says that anti-LGBTQ violence is soaring, just due to the fact that the bill is being debated. AIDS groups are really slamming the bill, but I don't know if I don't think it's going to stop it.
Well, certainly Justin Welby apologizing to the bishops is not going to help. And in the UK, the BBC has pulled out of the Stonewall Foundation or Stonewall Organization's Diversity Champions program to avoid a possible conflict of interest. They are also withdrawing from the Workplace Equality Index.
BBC is swinging to the right under this government, Boris Johnson.
Yeah. All right. Are we ready for our guest?
Yes, I am.
Jim Hubbard, come on down.
Oh, hi. Here I am.
Hi, Jim.
Great to see you two.
It's great to have you here. Jim is a total hero. He and Sarah Schulman created the ACT UP Oral History Project, even though people like me said, oh, who's going to want to hear that stuff?
I don't remember you saying that.
Well, I do, and I'm very, very embarrassed about it, but I am thrilled that you went ahead. So you created this, you created United in Anger, directed that beautiful documentary about all of that too, but you are now issuing a new version of the website, the actuporalhistory.org website, with the full interviews, film, video, and transcripts of everybody you interviewed for this project. How many people?
Well, there are 187 interviews, 189 people, because two of the interviews were doubles.
And you also have hundreds of hours of demonstrations and meetings. It's all there.
Yeah, no, as a filmmaker, it was always really important for me to show what happened. And by having these over 100 hours of AIDS activist video, people can see really what happened at the FDA or the NIH, what an ACT UP meeting was like, what the political funerals were like, and see the organizing and the work that goes into changing the world. And I hope that it'll help people understand how they can change the world for the better as well.
You do have footage of the FDA demo. We can start running that while we talk.
1988, we were angry that the FDA was not approving drugs fast enough, and we went to the FDA to shut it down and demand better systems for approving drugs.
Right.
Right, and that happened. So the important things were that there was a backlog of some over 100 possible drugs. I mean, in fact, none of those worked out. But also to create a parallel track so that people who needed drugs that weren't fully approved could get them. And we've seen the result of that is the vaccines for COVID were actually approved based on ACT UP's plan from 1988.
This is the one where Peter Staley was up on the roof above the entrance.
He made a practice of that. He did it there and at the NIH. But yes, and this is what you see there briefly is the power of activists who were absolutely relentless about demanding what we knew was needed. And let's listen to Greg Bordowitz, also from your video interviews, talk about the importance of the FDA action.
What the FDA did was shift the group away from a defensive posture to an offensive posture. When the FDA action put us on the offense and enabled us to come up with a vision for the way that healthcare should be done in this country, the way that drugs should be researched and sold and made available. And most importantly, and I keep returning to this, the idea that people with AIDS should be at the center of the public discussion on AIDS. And the FDA might not have been the only reason this happened, but it coincided with a shift. We had wrested control of the public discussion on AIDS away from the hands of the right wing in this country and toward the direction of, or in the hands of, people with the disease itself.
It's beginning to look like a golden age in retrospect as we fight the right wing, which has taken control in large part of the COVID discussion.
What do we think of the new FDA nominee?
You know, I'm not really the person to ask or answer that.
Okay.
I'm too involved in the past. You know, I sometimes say that I live in 1984. You know, I've just been doing this for so long. But, you know, I think that there are lessons in ACT UP, and I think the lessons are on the ACT UP oral history website for changing this. You know, if the three of us, of course, remember what it was like. I mean, we had no rights. The right wing was attacking us. AIDS was something from God meant, to make us pay for our sins. There were all sorts of, the government didn't care. The pharmaceutical industry was uninterested in creating drugs. The mainstream media was portraying people with AIDS in literally the worst light possible. And ACT UP and other AIDS activists forced that to change. Forced the FDA to really change the approval process, force the NIH to do the research that was necessary to create those drugs that for the opportunistic infections as well as HIV itself, and really change the way the media dealt with HIV and AIDS. I mean, it is, we're not in some paradise. There's still incredible stigma, and the criminalization of HIV is absolutely outrageous. But we're certainly in a much better situation
And the blueprint for that work is there in those 180 plus interviews, hours and hours and hours of it. And for anyone who's interested in how this work got done, it is just an invaluable resource. It's indescribable how rich it is. And I know it's been, you've had 2 million visits to this site already before you even put all this.
Right. Although Sarah reminded me that the actual number is 14 million. I screwed up in that email. Because it's actually over 1 million people per year visit the site, and hundreds of thousands of transcripts have been downloaded, and the video clips have been looked at hundreds of thousands of times. So I'm really hoping that with this, where there's 350 hours of interviews and more than 100 hours of actuality footage, that people will look at it and really learn from it. And the other, I also don't want to forget that the other piece of the ACT UP Oral History Project is the section on the Latino caucus, which is something that again, is largely forgotten. That, when those few people from ACT UP New York went down to Puerto Rico and helped foster the ACT UP Puerto Rico, they created not only an HIV/AIDS movement on Puerto Rico, on the island of Puerto Rico, but also they jump-started an LGBT movement there. So, there are all sorts of, that's what we like to say is that there was a simultaneity of action. There were always all sorts of things going on. And ACT UP had influence and changed many things in this country and around the world.
And in the beginning, there was almost no attention to women and AIDS. They weren't even testing drugs on women. So it became a big thing. And we have some testimony from Terry McGovern about that.
I went to ACT UP for the first time because I had certainly read in the papers about the demonstrations and I thought it was great, and so I found out where the meetings were and went down to the center and basically went on the floor and told what had happened, and that was, and basically asked people to do something, and we did a demonstration. But it was at that meeting where I was sitting, waiting to go up, where I heard people talking about the CDC definition of AIDS, and I heard like the Women's Caucus or whatever it's called, and I of course was seeing this problem. Like what I saw were all these women who couldn't qualify for benefits because it said HIV positive, not AIDS. And then they were like dying before they qualified, and I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to figure it out, and then so I go to ACT UP, and these women are like, "Oh, the CDC definition of AIDS excludes women."
So that led to a sustained campaign of demonstrations and attacks on the CDC, because literally the way HIV manifested in women was different than it manifested in men, and therefore women could not get the same benefits or access to treatment that men with HIV were getting. And so this was a demonstration in Atlanta against the CDC in the pouring rain to demand a change in the definition of AIDS so that women could be included in benefits. And again, that was ultimately a successful campaign.
Right, and I want to emphasize, it took 4 years to do this, of sustained work, of demonstrations and legal challenges to get included the cervical cancer and also the T cell count of less than 200, and that really changed the whole landscape of AIDS, not only in this country but around the world, because it was the CDC definition of AIDS that everyone all across the globe was using as the definition. So So women in this country could get Social Security, disability. They could get the health care they needed, but also people, women around the world. So it literally saved millions of lives.
Well, so getting back to the website, because that's what we want to direct people towards, and we're running out of time. You want to provide activists, students, teachers with a greater understanding of what the interviewees are talking about with a lot of this backup footage that you're putting on there.
Right, but the interviews are incredible. They're utterly fascinating. And, just a complete range of people and experiences in ACT UP and outside of ACT UP. And it really shows what kind of the one thing that all the people have in common is that they couldn't stand by and do nothing. That when we started the project, we thought, oh, there's some magic that creates an AIDS activist, but there really wasn't. It's about hard work and really being focused and having an intelligent analysis of the problem and coming up with solutions that really work. And these people are the people who did it, and I think it's important to emphasize that it wasn't just one person or 5 people. It was hundreds of people who were doing this, and in demonstrations there were thousands of people, but still that's a very small number of people. I mean, if you think
you've been doing this for more than 40 years,
right?
As a frontline filmmaker on
I have
LGBTQ and AIDS.
And I want to emphasize that what you'll find in these interviews is all that hard work, all that dedication, but also a lot of joy and a lot of fun and camaraderie, and so gratifying. The work was so fascinating and compelling and rewarding. So it's not a bunch of martyrs. It's a bunch of people who came together and enjoyed being together and doing the work.
Thanks for being with us, and thanks for all you do.
I'm sorry, what?
Thanks for being with us, and thanks for all you do.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for having me. And just actuporalhistory.org. Go and enjoy.
And you will enjoy, and you'll be just mesmerized by all the information and the video and the people. And Sarah Schulman's book, Let the Record Show, which is a companion to this and created out of hundreds of these interviews. So thank you, Jim. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you for doing this work. And
Get involved, everybody, and you can learn how on the website.
actuporalhistory.org. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well, yes, it is fascinating stuff.
Yes, and another hero of the movement was Stephen Karpiak, who just died at 74, kidney damage from an infection. He did a landmark study of HIV-positive people over 50 and did the landmark work on older people living with HIV. And he said, we gave them a pill and then said goodbye to them. And he explored their fragile support networks, their inadequate health care, depression, and really did important work and was a great hero to all.
When he started out in the 90s, 20% of people with HIV were 50 or over. It's expected to be 70% by 2030. He supervised clinical trials at ACREA for drugs in older people with HIV. There's going to be a memorial service for him on November 21st from 1 to 2:30 Eastern on Zoom. We will include that in our email as well.
And there's a stunning story out of Argentina where a 30-year-old woman who was diagnosed with HIV in 2013, 8 years ago, has been found to have had her immune system clear the virus on its own
second case of this. It's called the sterilizing cure through natural immunity.
Yeah.
The researchers now have to figure out how it works.
Yes.
We know that 1 in 200 people with HIV can suppress the virus without retrovirals, and this woman cleared it.
Yeah, that's very, as Andy says, only 2 cases discovered. So she's being totally cooperative about helping out with these studies. They have looked at billions of her cells looking for HIV, and all they found are 7 slightly damaged HIV cells. So.
Hey, in COVID news, congratulations, LGBTQ people. 91% of us are vaccinated versus 70% of the general population of the United States. So we are leading the way.
All right. So let's get to entertainment news because we got a lot there too. First of all, I want to say thank you to Christina Kim of the LPGA, who in this week's tournament, thank you, Christina, she's quite a character, was wearing a couple of pins on her hat. One was the Pride Progress flag, and the other is a Black Lives Matter pin. Now, Christina, as far as I know, is a straight ally. She's always had boyfriends, but she's a great progressive and a ton of fun and very supportive. And it's nice to see that popping up in places like an LPGA tournament.
Yes. On Dancing with the Stars, JoJo and Jenna got perfect scores in the semifinals in both dances, and they will be in the finals. There they are doing their tangos. And the gay guy got in too, Cody Rigsby with Cheryl Burke. Cody is a Peloton instructor and proud gay man.
I am very amused at having turned Andy into a Dancing with the Stars correspondent. But the thing about JoJo and Jenna this week was they had to do a dance that improved on a previous dance. So they did an Argentine tango, which Len, chief judge, had described in their original version as too staccato. And so he goes to visit them as they're practicing, and he says, I want you to ooze more, to be more sexual, these 2 women. And when they did this version, everybody, all the judges just almost fainted away at how sexy the dance was. One of them called it bloody brilliant. Oh, that was Len. And it was amazing.
All right, now let's get to the kissing news.
Okay.
At the Country Music Awards, T.J. Osborne kissed his boyfriend there, Abby Ventura. After the brothers Osborne won Vocal Duo of the Year.
For the 4th time.
They sang Love Wins Tonight. TJ told,
No, they sang Younger Me, which is a brilliant song. We put a link to it in the show note last week. Go to YouTube and watch T.J. Osborne singing Younger Me. It is a knockout.
But Love did win that night, and that's what T.J. told the audience.
He said it's been a crazy roller coaster of a year. This is after coming out, especially for me emotionally, and your support makes me feel like love wins tonight.
He said he never anticipated the love he's received since coming out. All right, moving on.
Well, because the Tennessee House of Representatives, when faced with a proposal to honor him after he came out, rejected it.
Sure. In the Chucky TV series, of all things, about an evil doll that's been around forever, a 14-year-old protagonist, Jake, played by Zachary Arthur, had a same-sex kiss with his friend, Devin, played by Bjorn Aronson. They did this after saving the town from Chucky, and it's a very sweet scene. I watched it online. The series creator, Don Mancini, is gay and has been injecting gay content into the franchise since Bride of Chucky, and he says he put a lot of himself in Zach.
And a same-sex kiss on The Simpsons coming up.
Yep, that's Waylon Smithers there on the left, finally finds love. He's been out for a while, since 2016, but he found love with Michael DeGroff, who's a fashion designer, in an episode written by longtime series writer Bob Rob Zebnik, and his gay son, Johnny.
Now, you may have heard that Paul Rudd is People magazine, sexiest man alive. When they have gotten to Paul Rudd, I think the franchise has run out.
He did a lot of gay roles.
Well, he's just, who am I to judge? But he wouldn't have been my first pick. But they do a whole range of people.
You're a lesbian.
I know, but I can appreciate beauty.
I like Paul.
Anyway, they do a number of other people that they designate as in the category, and one of them was Brian Michael Smith this year, who is a trans man. He's appeared on 911 Lone Star. I saw him on Queen Sugar, where he had some guest roles. He's been on The L Word, Blue Bloods, Chicago PD, Law and Order, Girls. He's the first trans man to be one of the sexiest men alive.
He's an HRC board member. And Lil Nas X was also included among the sexy.
And he's doing some crazy thing this week. It airs this afternoon as we record on Wednesday. It seems to, on Maury Povich's show, he's doing something where he confronts his boyfriend about having a wife. And the husband and wife are in Lil Nas X's video. So this is all some crazy
Maury Povich
selling stunt. It's weird. But I really want to recommend a couple of things. We've been telling you about the HBO series We're Here, where Bob the Drag Queen, Eureka, and Shangela, all major drag stars, go to small towns around the country each week, connecting with the local gay people, many of whom are closeted and scared, and end up doing a big drag show in town. Well, they've been to some very tiny places, Del Rio, Texas, Selma, Alabama. But this week they went to Watertown, South Dakota. And I think this was the toughest one of all. And it was a fantastic show. So We're Here, Watertown, South Dakota is my recommendation. And
Always Jane on Amazon Prime, a docuseries on Jane Norrie, a trans teen in suburban New Jersey's Sparta town. She decided on gender confirmation surgery her senior year of high school.
And the great movie Surviving the Silence, about a lesbian couple, one of them in the military, who had to pass judgment on Margaret Kammermeyer, is now available on Amazon and Apple TV. Surviving the Silence. It's really good.
Thanks for being with us. We'll be back with you
next week. Bye.